It's always such a great pleasure to have you on Testify. I'm Sharon Aitore Wangenye, and we are set for an amazing time of hearing an amazing story of the Ndungus. Bishop Ndungu and his wife Faith are here, and they're going to be sharing with us the journey of their lives. They have accomplished quite a lot, but they have also been through a whole share of what life has to give. So they'll be sharing that to us. Allow me to now allow them to introduce themselves. And I begin with Mom.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you.
And I count it a privilege that you called us to share our story and just to encourage somebody out there. And you say probably in a way of introduction, my name is Faith Kehato Ndungu. And so when you hear those two names, they come with a story. And yeah, Kenyan woman, born in Kenya. I was born in Murang'a. Those days it was the Murang'a district. Today is the county. And I was born in a place called Githumu in Kandara. I was born last of 10 children.
Wow, 10.
Yes. I have 6 sisters and 3 brothers. And so you can imagine when I'm being born 10, it means my parents were quite advanced in age. By the time I came along, I think I just came last because I was just last. There was no other. Yeah. Those days, I don't think mothers used to do family planning. So it's the babies come until there are no more babies. So I was the last
I think that
one.
was good planning. What do you mean?
By God. I think it's by default, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I grew up under Christian parents. My father initially was not a Christian, but my mother was. And from the very early age, I remember her always praying for us and teaching us the Word of God and taking us to Sunday school. But my father, when I was young, he wasn't born again, and so he used to drink. And I grew up in the village, and so just as village life goes. And growing up, I must say, had its own shares of blessings and difficulties. And probably in ways of maybe the difficulties is that we had financial constraints. When I was in high school, I think that is when I really noticed how hard it was for us financially. When I was supposed to go to Form 1, that is one of the things I remember even now, I was actually top in our school, and I was admitted to the local high school, Githumu High School. I was the first student to be admitted. But there was no school fees. And so I stayed home. People reported to Form 1. I stayed home. There was no money. Everybody had reported, and now they were going to the second intake. And I think the matron of the school, because of course they knew my father, they came and said, hey, do you know we are going to take the second intake and your daughter has not reported. So you either bring her or we give the position to another. And my older sister heard about it from Thika, and she came and rescued me. She paid for it. And you know, it was only 940
Shillings.
Kenya shillings, but we didn't have it. And I still remember that because it made me really realize how difficult life was for us. And it kind of made me feel ashamed that I can't even go to school. And you see, being a high school in our village, my father owns a restaurant in the shopping area. He's known by everybody because he was also very outgoing. So everybody knew him. And so the people even in the school, they knew him. And here I am, I can't even report to school. But why? Because I had a sister in that school in Form 4 then. I had a sister in Tumutumu Girls in Form 4. I had a brother in Kianyaga Boys. I think I had my sister in Mugoiri in A-level. I mean, so really there was no money. Yeah. So my sister came very annoyed, and I was told to go to a shop and just, like borrow. Those who grew up country, they know how you would go to the shops and
borrow shopping.
And to borrow shopping. And you had to be careful because you don't want to talk before other people who are paying. So you wait for everybody to buy their stuff. And then you say, I was sent by my father. I was told to come and carry this or the other.
You will pay later.
And sometimes the shopkeeper would be rude, to you. But I still remember I went to that lady's shop and carried, every small item, the smallest of toothpaste, the smallest of the soap, like that. And I reported to Form 1. Luckily, I reported to Form 1. And so life was hard, but I worked very hard. One of the things that I knew is that my father valued education very much. So even with all these problems, when we got to school, we worked hard. And he always reminded us, you're not like those children from the rich families, they can afford. For you, you have to work hard to make your life work. And so I worked very hard, and I actually did well through the high school, but I was sent home many times. One of the experiences I always never forget is that even when our school went on strike, I was home, I was away because of school fees. And I missed the fun of the striking. I only heard stories of how people jumped the fences and went to the bushes. I missed that because I was home because of school fees. And I was sent home for school fees even in Form 4, until the headmaster was very angry and said, tell your father he's not serious. He's making you go home, you're in Form 4. But you know what, when we did our O-level exam, I think we used to call it, what was it, KCE then? I guess it must have been KCE, now I forget. It's those many years ago. That was actually 1983. So we are talking many years.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you were born then, Sharon. I wouldn't ask. But when we did the Form 4 exam, I actually emerged second in our school.
Wow.
And so I was able to get an A-level, admission. And as it were, with growing up, sometimes we are not, there's stupidity. The Bible says there's stupidity in the heart of a child, and the rod of discipline removes it. One of the things I did is, because I loved to do home science, I looked up schools that were doing home science in A-level, and there were very few. So the school I got was in Kitui. Lo and behold, from our place in Muranga, I chose a school in Kitui called St. Angela's, Motune. And I was admitted. My father was shocked. He said, how did they admit you in Kitui? How do you get to Kitui? We don't have money. Even just getting you there, I said, I don't know how they admitted me there. I cheated, because I knew I would get a beating. I would get a beating if I said I was admitted. I'm the one who chose the school, because, how do you do that? And so I was taken to St. Angela's. My father had to travel with me in a matatu, and then we walked kilometers and kilometers to get to the school. And my father did that for all of us. Every one of us, wherever we were admitted, he took us. He would take us. And after 2 terms, I really got sick with malaria. Mm-hmm. I had very bad malaria. And so when I went home, because after I had been in the dormitory for a long time in bed, and I was almost like a stick. Even today, I've never added a lot onto my flesh. So you can imagine that I might look like a stick. When I went home, my mother looked at me and said, Imetosha. Asirudi shule. My child cannot die there. So I had to be transferred, and that was Form 5, that term, so that was really tough. I went to Maryhill Girls, and that is where I finished my A-level.
Okay.
And after A-level...
Allow me to ask you, by this time,
yeah,
have you found school fees, or how are you going from Kitui to Maryhill?
By then, I think my sister was helping. And one day I remember, I think when I was going to the A-level, she paid school fees for me again. She was my older sister. She was almost like my mother because there are like 20 years difference between us. So she was really like my mother. So by then she was actually paying school fees for me. And one day she actually gave me the school fees and told me, let me keep paying school fees for you. And then when you finish school, I hear that you got a baby or something like that. And that made me vow, I will not mess with my life. she will never see me with a baby out of wedlock. Because I could tell the pain she was feeling of having to support her siblings. But I really thank God for her because she supported me, and because of that support, I actually went through school, went to the A-levels, finished. I was admitted, later on I went to Kenya Technical Teachers College, KTTC. That's a long story, I don't want to give it, because those days we had to really look, we are the ones who used to look for schools for ourselves. When I finished A-level, I worked in Trika Girls as an untrained teacher, walking to school, very dusty, and of course you only have 2-3 dresses, and you are a teacher. So sometimes it's embarrassing because these were kids. This was a private school, so kids were from rich families. And they used to find us very hopeless, you know.
And you're the teacher.
And we are the teachers. And you come to school, we are very dusty because we would walk a dusty road every day. And so I taught in Trika Girls for a year and a half. And in the midst of that, I met a girl that was with me in St. Angela's. And she said, oh, you know, have you ever heard of KTTC? Oh, no, I've never heard. You know, there are applications, the people have already applied. And so I went to the, you know, to Thika library, looked for the newspapers, you know, from the archives, and I saw, and it wasn't closed. And so I applied for myself, and I was admitted. So at least finally I got to college.
Wow.
And in the meantime, I had applied many jobs, bank, for an editor's job, different things, but nothing was coming along. And while I was teaching, I was also taking care of my sister's children. I had my older sister that I talked about, another sister, they were living in Thika. So this time I'm in this house, the next time I'm in this other house helping them, taking care of their children. And so I learned a lot about housekeeping and baby care through that. And so I finally got admitted to KTTC. Life got better, because we were not paying. KTTC was sponsored by the Canadian government. We were not paying, and we were actually getting a boom. We used to get 200 shillings at the end of the month. That was a lot of money.
Just hold it right there, Benfi. Let's hear just a little from Bishop Ndungu before we continue.
Wow, what a story. You know, listening to that story, it sounds like I'm hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
But I see God's blessing in all that.
Amen.
For me, I've also come a long way. And I come from Murang'a also.
Oh.
That's why I grew up, you know, born and grew up there in a village called Mariaine. I don't know that you've heard of that. Not too far from not too far from Keno. I think Keno is known on your way to Murang'a. And that's, of course, I was born and went to primary school in the rural area. And of course, like she's saying also, there was a lot of need in this setting. And my father was a police officer serving in the police force, and so he was gone most of the year. And I'm the fourth born in a family. Have how many other children? We are 8, so I'm fourth born, and you know, we are not 10 like them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, our mother took care of us. She's still alive. My father went to be the Lord in 2006, and she really worked hard in the farm, you know, growing, you know, beans and maize and arrowroots and bananas and all that to take care of us. And so it was a tough journey. I remember going to the primary school. Most of the year we didn't have lunch. We only had, you know, 1 meal per day. That is in the evening, and breakfast. If you are lucky, you have a cup of tea, and if there is not firewood, or the rain came last night and the firewood was rained on, then you don't have anything. You try to set up the fire, and finally you give up and you just dismantle everything and go to school running and angry and crying, because you have nothing and you know you're not going to have lunch. And then, of course, you only have something in the evening. So it was quite a tough journey, but we made it through by God's grace. And then I went to Jombe High School, where I studied, in the secondary school. And then from there, after high school, I went to Kenya Police College. My father, like I said, because he was a police officer, he also kind of, influenced me to join the police force. And so I joined the police. I didn't know much about the police. I thought it was a very prestigious job. And so I thought this is a great opportunity for me to join the police force. So I went there to Kiganjo police training. Man, that was tough.
So were you training to be a police officer?
Yes, I am training to be a police officer, like my dad, who has been in the police force for more than 20 years. So I want to be like him. And I thought it's a good thing, it's a good career, which I could pursue. Little did I know the hardships waiting, that going even to the college, it was tough. It was really tough being there, waking up 3 a.m. every morning, running for 10 kilometers, carrying a gun. It's raining. Kigajo can be very wet. And but I decided I'm not giving up. A lot of people gave up. Some of them ran away. Others would hide on top of the trees because the journey is very tough. And the training was very tough. From when you wake up at 3 until 10 o'clock in the night, you don't sit down. It is from one thing to the other. And every time you're in the college, you have to be marching. You have to, you can't just walk, and have leisure. No. And even if, the language, of course, is yes, sir.
And saluting.
Nini. You have to salute the seniors and all that. Even if you're going to the bathroom, you have to carry your gun. You can't leave it anywhere because they want to cultivate some discipline in you, that a gun is not something you play around with. You can't just leave it there and forget. And so it was very tough. But I went through that and I graduated. I still remember the former president, Moi, came for the graduation. He was a guest of honor. The training was only about 7 months. It didn't take long, but it sounded like 3 years because, because of the tight schedule and how tough it was. And so we graduated, and he came, and I remember because this time we don't even have money and all that, and only food. And the food, actually, it was enough, but it was not enough in that the schedule was so tight that even the food you are eating, you don't even know where it's going. So you're eating a lot, but you're growing so thin.
So thin.
And you'd eat in a hall, and there's a door to come in and a door to go out. There are no seats. So you
eat standing?
No, you don't stand. You eat walking.
Wow.
So you serve your food here as you're coming in, and then you continue eating. By the time you exit the door, you leave your plate there. That's what it means to be a policeman, to be trained to be a policeman. And then the same with the breakfast. If you go out there and you're running and you come late, the tea or the breakfast is gone. And so it was tough training. And I really appreciate it today because it built in me some character and some discipline that I'm able to fight, I'm able to overcome challenges and fight on in life. Because what it teaches you is how to be resilient, to be strong and all that. You are not just that kind of a person who gives up so quickly. And then going to the police force, apparently I was posted in her home area.
Just hold it right there.
Wow.
Is this coincidence or it's just God working? We'll find out.
It's God working.
Amen. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. We were at the point where you were posted to her home area.
Yeah, that's right. After the training we graduated from the police college. And initially, I was posted to go to Kisumu, not Githumu, with a K.
Oh.
But somehow my father intervened.
Yeah.
He knew somebody who intervened, and I thought of going to Kisumu in Nyanza, and I thought, am I going to resign before even I'm posted, or what is going to happen? Because I've never left my home area, so how can I even go all the way to Kisumu? But he intervened, and probably they changed a few things from Kisumu to Githumu. To Githumu, and that I didn't even know. I mean, that this time we knew each other, because what happened is that as young people we had ministry called JEREC, that is Jesus Revival Crusaders.
By this time you were born again?
Yes, I am. Actually,
Okay.
even by the time I went to college, to the police college, even high school, I was born again. I don't know, are you born again?
I'm born again.
You didn't say.
Were you
I
born
got
again
born
then?
again in my Form 6.
From 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, even joining high school, I think I got born again just before I got the Christmas, before I joined high school. And so by the time I'm going high school, I was the Christian Union chairman. People trusted me. I was preaching a lot, even in high school. Now, when I left, I was now posted to Githumu. And going back a little bit, I said we knew each other because we were introduced to a ministry called JEREC, Jesus Revival Crusaders. Before then, it was KET, Kangema Evangelistic Team, but later on, we had now people from everywhere. So it was Jesus Revival Crusaders. The leader of this ministry was then Wamutito. Today, he's a bishop, Joe Wamutito. He lives in America. And apparently, her late husband was also part of the leadership of this ministry. Later on, he became a leader and all that. So they were targeting, bringing high school and college students joining the ministry so that the ministry can be vibrant, reaching out to schools. And I think once a year, would have a camp in one of the schools, especially in Muranga. We'd go to Muranga High School, Kangema High School, Jombe High School, and all that. I remember, I think the first I attended was in Jombe High School when I was in high school, and I was invited. So I decided instead of going home, would go home for a few days and come back. And of course, especially in those days, and even today, the brethren, the ministers would be very smart. For me, I didn't have a coat, I didn't have a jacket, I didn't have a tie. I think I had somebody had given me one red tie. So I only had one red tie. And so what happened, I went to my neighbors and I borrowed a coat, a black coat, so that at least when I put on my red tie, I look like I'm wearing a suit or something. And nikachomoka hapo wearing this borrowed coat, and then after I came back home, it was 5 days, very impactful. We came back, rejoicing, full of the Holy Spirit, and feeling like we didn't want to go home. People are crying. When the conference would come to an end, people would literally cry and say, no, we don't want to go back. We want to stay here. There was a fire, the anointing, and everything. So, but I eventually came back home, and I didn't take back the coat. And I stayed with it for another week until the mother of this young man sent a messenger and said, can you go and tell him my son is visiting Nairobi in the next few days. Should bring back the coat. Where I didn't have any choice, I had to take it back. So I sent back the coat, and I felt so bad. But again, I was very passionate. Even this time in high school, would come to places like Thika, Kiambu High School. I didn't know even where these places were. Sometimes I would be asking somebody, because there are no phones, I would be asking somebody to take me to the matatus that go to Kiambu High School to attend a conference there there's a ministry that was called Bethsaida World Ministries, and they used to hold their meetings in Kiambu. And I was just passionate about ministry, about serving, and just being there for the kingdom of God. Sometimes my dad had, because he was a senior police officer, he had a house in some place in Kirereshwa. And sometimes I would go there visiting, and because I don't have transport, I would walk from there to Kibera in Sabah for a crusade, and I would come back, go speaking in tongues and come back singing, so that the journey doesn't seem so long. And so kind of that's how we grew spiritually, just being passionate. So I'm now posted in Githumu. I'm here excited and feeling like now I have a job, a salary of 1,700. And to me, this is a lot of money, not per day, per month. And feeling like, wow, I got it. Well, my first shock is the house I was allocated. When I arrived at Ndungu police station, I looked at the station. Of course, a very small office block where everybody comes to work. Very, just like, one room. But that's where everybody is. The OCS and all the officers, maybe like 15 officers. And then the house I was taken to, there are those houses that were built in the 50s by the white, colonial government. And they don't have even the plaster, they don't have the ceiling, they don't have electricity, no water. There was one common bathroom and shower out there. You have to walk all the way back, then carrying your basin to go and shower. If you find maybe there are a few other people, you queue, you put your basin there and queue. And in case you're in a hurry, you would just put some towels near your door, your room, because it was a single room, 10 by 10, and you shower there, and then you push the water out. And the other challenge is that we were sharing the room, because every police officer would share the room with somebody else. So time when your neighbor is not there, then you take a shower. When he's back, you can't take a shower. And the way you divide the room is through curtains. You remember those blue bed sheets? That's how you put the curtains. That's your room, and that's my room. So it was I wouldn't say self-contained, it was remote controlled house, because, you have your stove here, you're cooking here, and of course, just a small table, a stool. Actually, I had 2 stools. You're sitting on one stool, and the other stool you place whatever you need to place there, and your bed is back here, and your stove and your utensils here. Everything is just within reach. You don't even have to stand and get anything. I mean, everything is just here. And once you have eaten, of course, you cook here, you eat here, and then you don't even need to stand. You push back, and the bed is here. And you sleep.
Now, Bishop, what about those people who had families? How are they living?
Well, sometimes it was tricky. Sometimes they would consider that. But there are times also they would put people with the people who have families.
Oh.
And maybe the wife was living there, or maybe she would come and go. But it was not easy. It was very, very, very tough. So for me, coming in as a young person, and I was given to live with somebody who was above 50 years. And so
And you were how old? 20-something?
Yeah, 20-something, leaving college, maybe 21, 22 or something.
Yeah.
And here I am now, staying with this man. The house was so dirty because he didn't care about cleaning the house. And for me, I'm coming here with my nice, things, clean and all that, neat. And he used to cook using firewood in the same house. And then he was laying chicken in the same house. Well, it was tough. And I looked at this house and I wondered, my goodness, is this what I'm calling a miracle?
That's a single room.
A single 10 by 10. It's from here to there. I mean,
wow.
And I arrived on Thursday. Of course, I don't even have a bed. I bought a mattress and just put it on the floor. The following Saturday, I removed everything outside, at least to try and clean up this house, remove the cobwebs and the smoke that was hanging everywhere, clean for the chicken. And when he came back in the evening, because he was a police driver, he looked at the house and he went to the senior person and said, no. Of course, he stopped cooking in the house. He used to eat outside now in the restaurants because he was using firewood. How can you use firewood in a police station and in a 10 by 10 room? I mean, but of course you can tell he didn't clean the house at all. And then, so later on, I think he was moved out and I was given somebody else. At least it was probably, the age was not, the difference in age was not so much. So I stayed there, and then they began to tell me, you know what, we have seen people like you come, and then after that you have to be like everybody else. Your motto, your college, nini. And I told them, for me, I'm born again. I love the Lord. I'm a believer. I'm not even interested with the bribes, because sometimes we'd be sent to the road there, to check the vehicles. And sometimes they'll just drop a coin, 10 shillings or 5 shillings. And then the police officer will go and step on it and then look around and pretend he's scratching or something and pick it. And I looked at it and said, well, the God I have believed is bigger than this. I only have 2 stools, But I told them, I'm not interested with these 5, 10 shillings. I can trust God to bless me. And of course, I stayed like that for quite some time, a year or two, with just 2 stools. And one day, my sister who was living in Nairobi, she had a better job in the ministry. She called me and said, I want to change my sofa set. Can you come for this one? I didn't wait for her to finish. I said, yes, I'm coming tomorrow. It took the police Land Rover all the way. She lived in South B, all the way to South B. I still remember that velvet, seat now coming to this room. Of course, it doesn't fit well. And the whole evening, the whole police station kind of came to a standstill. This young man has a sofa set. Some of us have worked here for 15 years. We don't even have one. How come? And they began to respect me. They began to say, well, I think the God you serve is making sense. Now you have a sofa set in your house. And so the journey was quite tough. Sometimes you're leaving work at 11 o'clock and you just go make dinner, sleep at maybe midnight or after midnight. And then after 1 hour before you even sleep, you catch that nice sleep. And Gedumu can be called. They begin to call you. Somebody is knocking the door. Hey, Peter, come. There's some dags or something. We need to go to work. And I can't tell you how many times I resigned. And I'm just talking to myself. Then I'm just saying, I have resigned. I don't want that job. That time you are waking up and changing. Because again, you have to go back to the uniform that you have just left an hour ago. And so it was quite tough. But people really, including, I knew her dad, they really respected me in the village because they heard about this policeman who is born again. Sometimes we would hold crusades around that area, in Gedumu area, and preach the gospel there. We would go to the tea centers with a horn speaker and preach the gospel, and people would come to the Lord door to door. So they heard about this policeman, and they really respected me. So let alone, I didn't stay there for so long, about 5, 6 years. I decided to call it off. And I resigned, and I decided, well, I want to go and try something else. And of course, even when I said that, the OCS called me and said, Peter, are you sure you want to resign? Please, maybe it's a pressure, maybe you are depressed or something. I want to give you 1 month leave. Go and think about it and come back and tell me. I said, no, I'm decided. I want to leave. Let me go preach the gospel and also do small businesses.
Just hold it right there, Bishop.
Yeah.
Let me come back to Mom. Mm-hmm. We left it at where you had completed Form 6? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. How did life progress for you after that?
Yeah, so...
You had joined college, actually.
Yes, I joined college, and probably to retract back a little bit is that when I was in Form 6, in my first term, I received the Lord as my Savior. And and how I came to know the Lord is that my brother, my follower, that time was in JKUAT. That time it used to be Jomo Kenyatta College of Agriculture. It was not a university, and he got born again. And so when we came for the school holidays, he preached to me with other young men in the village that had also received Christ. And we were going to mainstream churches, ACC and S, it was our church. We had AIC, so it was really like mainstream churches. But now, these young men had gotten born again, then they were on fire. And one evening they really preached to me. And I will always and forever remember that night, because they preached to me and they refused to give up, because I was like, I'm not getting born again, I am not ready. And they insisted. And finally, I think at 2 in the morning, I said, I received Christ. And that was a turning point for me. But again, it wasn't dramatic. I think the next day I was leaving to go to my sister's place, I think in Machakos. So so I really didn't have time for a particular person to nurture me, but I had received Christ. And so when I went to school, I still struggled a little bit. I loved dancing very much. And I know there are people who get born again, young people that love dancing and love worldly music. And sometimes you feel like I can't get born again. and I would want to encourage them that it is possible. I got born again, but I struggled with music for quite some time. Actually, the Lord helped me when I was in college through one preacher. And so I finished A-level, now I'm born again, and now I went to KTTC. And while I was in KTTC, right from first year, I started actually being in the leadership. You know, I was the Sunday school coordinator. That's a story for another day. I struggled a lot. As I said, you see, I was a new Christian. I've just gotten born again. I have not had people to disciple me. I can't actually say I had people to disciple me. So actually, my college years is where I kind of got discipled. And so it was difficult to be in leadership, but I'm yet still struggling. Yeah. You know, I remember the first weekend when I went to college, I actually went for a dance. I don't think I've ever told him that.
Well, time to confess.
You know, I mean, I had never gone to a disco. And there was, you know, it's the Friday night, the first years are being welcomed, and these disco lights, you know, and it looks so glorious to me. And I'm like, you know, my roommate was not born again. And so it's like, let's go for the dance. So I went and danced, but then I felt very, very odd. I felt like, I felt very guilty. And then I felt like, this is not my life. And because the Christian Union leaders, they used to be very keen. The KTTC Christian Union was like a church, very strong. It was actually a church because we used to have even Sunday school. The staff's children would come to the church there. And so I was actually a Sunday school coordinator. And so they really helped me when they realized I was struggling. First of all, they got me another girl who had also just got born again that week when we reported, and we became roommates. And now somehow they start teaching you how to stay close to the brethren. I remember we used to work a lot with Bishop Thomas Muthe of Kiambu. He would call us to go and preach with him. We would go to Karura Forest. There were some villages in there. Actually, where there is the village market, there used to be a slum we used to call it New York. And we used to go and do crusades there, door-to-door evangelism. There was another one called Huruma inside Karura Forest. And so we did a lot of ministry work, and that is where we grew. You know, I started growing in my faith. I started becoming strong, realizing my giftings, you know, to be able to teach, to be able to actually speak the word of God. And that is also where I met my first husband. Because when I came in first year, and I still remember, we were told there were two brothers that weekend. There were two brothers who were out for a ministry. They had gone for missions. And so when they came back during the Wednesday fellowship, we were told, the brothers who were out, they had come. And there was this brother who was left-handed. And I was left-handed. And so there was this brother who was left-handed. And he had a funny name. He was called Kehato. Yeah. So that was really like, wow, I've never had such a name. And then he would write the prayer. I still remember he wrote the prayer items on the board, and he's writing with his left hand. And I'm thinking, that is so funny.
I'm not left-handed.
And so him and later on, he actually became the chairman of the Christian Union. But him and other brethren, they really walked with us. And they were very serious brothers. I remember for him, his friends used to say he's too good for earthly use, for any earthly use. He's heavenly bound. You know, those days people were very serious with their Christianity. But he would really nurture us in the faith, teach us how to testify, teach us how to go for prayer, and would go for prayer and labor in prayer. You know, we used to have powerhouses. We used to call them powerhouse. You know, some classrooms right at the corners, you know, and people would go and labor in the prayer rooms and pray. And by the time I was finishing the 3 years and he was finishing his 4 years, now we had started becoming friends and started realizing God was leading us to a life together. And that happened to many of the brethren also there. People somehow would come out of that college kind of paired up.
Yeah.
And so by the time I left KTTC, I went to teach in Thika Technical Institute. And somehow he also worked around to also make sure he teaches there.
All right.
Yes.
Just hold it,
so
all right?
You can see the turn things are taking.
I see it.
But in the meantime, he used to be in the Jesus Revival Crusaders, the JREC.
Okay.
He was actually the vice chair.
All
at the beginning.
Where Bishop was also serving.
And so he would invite us to go for the camps during the August holiday. Actually, like when we were almost finishing college, he said, you know, you people keep wondering where I go every weekend, come and see. So we attended some of their meetings, and now Peter was also there, and he was in the police force, and we used to call him Kamau Police. That's what we used to call him. And we loved his preaching because he was humorous, always making us laugh. So that's where I met him, but nothing happened because I was taken.
Oh, that's a nice place to put it at. Please stay with us. The story is getting better and juicier. There's a lot more we're yet to hear. Don't go away. You are at Hope TV, where you look and live, and this is Testify. I have with me Mr. and Mrs. Peter and Ndungu, who are pastors they've done quite a lot of other things that we're going to be hearing about. But we left it at where, Ma'am Faith, you had met this guy, and you were, actually you said you were taken. Yeah, so you were working towards marriage.
Yes, so we were teaching at Thika Technical together, and in 1992, December, we got married, 19th of December, 1992. It had been a long journey. Since we became friends, it was like 5 years.
Wow.
Sometimes thinking, forget about it. I don't think this is
what
going
would
anywhere.
Make you think so?
He was very ambitious about education. And so he kept wanting to get scholarships to go, I don't know where. He wanted to go to Cyprus. He wants to go where. And actually, at some point, I thought, I'm not anywhere in this picture. And forget about it.
You didn't want to travel with him?
He didn't talk about my traveling with him.
It was just
so at some point, I'm like, where am I in the picture of going to Cyprus, you know? And as it goes sometimes with relationships, you know, it's a journey. And of course, you see, we had started when we were in college. And so at the beginning, it was almost like you were not even sure. And then he used to be he was a very strict Christian. Wanted to really walk the straight way, doesn't want people to see him, you know, with a girl all over the place. And so it was really, I had to really walk the tightrope, which was good. It was good for us. But when we started teaching, and then the settling down, because now, actually when I came to Thika Technical, I came for my teaching practice, but he had just been posted because he left before me. And then I was actually posted there. And so now we started kind of relating a bit more seriously, but in the meantime, he's looking for scholarships, so he's not ready for marriage. I think guys sometimes take time to get ready for marriage. Because by the time we got married, he was 29, and I'm almost thinking, this is too much.
And you were 21?
And by the time we got married, I was 26. And so it took him time. Actually, I think at some point he saw somebody interested in me, and it's like he said, hey, wait a minute. We need to get married. Because I was like getting tired, you know? Anyway, but we used to also be very busy, still with Jerek. By then he had become the chairman because Joe Wamutito had left for America. He had become the chairman. So we were busy, you know, doing the work of the ministry. I was busy myself as a young lady. I loved to visit with my friends and would go to ladies' conferences and any other missions. I was always having my black bag. The teachers in the staff room knew the black bag is there at the corner on Friday because Faith is going, you know, and just going to preach and all those kind of things. So I enjoyed my youth. I also had time to grow in my faith and even to discover my calling. And so finally we got married, and we used to go to Thika Christian Church together, and God blessed us with 2 children. We had a girl called Jacqueline, and then we had a boy called Steve. But in the meantime, still doing the work of the ministry. In the meantime, he got a job with the American Embassy. That was 1993. And so he stopped now teaching and went to work with the American Embassy, and I was left teaching. And so he would travel to Nairobi every day, but we were still busy with Jerek. Jerek was such a tight fellowship. People loved one another so much. And so while we were continuing on, other people, because we were all young people, other people also now had started to get married, including him. He also now got married to a beautiful lady called Beatrice. He can talk about that.
He will tell us that.
But she was my friend too. And so all of us started settling down in families. Others started, actually getting the calling now to even minister in the church and become pastors. And so to some extent, it's like Jerek started to, people are starting to go different directions.
So Bishop, we left it at where you were saying you want to resign and your boss is giving you a month to go think about it.
Yeah, I didn't take the month. I decided I had made up my mind. I was tired of this job. And of course, even when I was working with the Kenya police, I was still evangelizing, preaching the gospel. So for me, the passion was really preaching the gospel. I could have done this for get a little income because it was quite literal. Like I said, 1,750 per month. So even getting a decent meal was really a miracle, so to say. I would buy a quarter of meat, at the end of the month, just a quarter. And then after that, you can afford to, because that's the budget. At least you buy one quarter every month. But when I went ahead and I resigned, I wrote the letter to resign. And when I resigned, I came to Nairobi. And I wasn't quite sure where I was going and what was going to happen. But I had faith that, not her, but I had faith in God that God will make a way for me. I knew a few people in Nairobi, young people and all that. This time I'm not married yet. And so I went and settled in a place in Kikuyu. My elder brother, Steve, had a small business in Kikuyu. And so I went there and he started, this time it was actually in town, around Old Nation Center. He had a small shop there. Later on, he opened another shop in Kikuyu of selling clothes and such. So I got myself into Gekomba, market, and I started selling secondhand clothes. I would buy some, especially the jackets, the kabuti, the watchman, and would buy some and trim it and kind of fashion it to look like a jacket. Yeah. somebody looking at it would think, well, that's not a kabuti, that's a jacket. And then maybe you buy it for 150, you use 100 to trim it and put nice zip instead of the big buttons. And then you sell it maybe you add another 100, 350 or 400 or something like that. And I realized, well, I could make money out of this. So I started those small businesses in Gekomba, then buying stuff from, this time I was still preaching in Muranga. I used to live in Kikuyu, and I was preaching in Makuyu. So I would travel all the way from Kikuyu, connect in town in Nairobi, connect in Thika again, go to Makuyu, connect again, and go to a place called Mongedo. So, so it was quite a journey. But I would make sure, because I was very passionate about, serving the Lord, I would make sure by 8 o'clock I'm there. After traveling all that, actually I would find people have not arrived, the neighbors, just there. And so I became very passionate about both business and serving the Lord. And out of that, I started doing small other things, and I would buy like shoes and sweaters from River Road. And I had a few friends like at, NSSF, who are working there. Reverend Moroki was one of them who are working there. He introduced me to a few friends there. And I would go and sell them some clothes. And then I would make a few hundreds here and there.
So
at the end of the month.
That way you were making more than being a police officer?
Much more. Because now in Kikuyu, I could afford to rent a house of about 3,000-4,000, and I would pay the rent. Though the house I first went to in Kikuyu, it didn't have water and it didn't have electricity. But at least it was plastered and painted, so it was much better, and it was one-bedroom house. And at least, and the most important, the shower was inside the house, not outside. Later on, I moved to another house that was more decent with electricity and water, which I was paying 5,000, a place called Dagimu. And then I moved to Kidimfamako, even a more decent house. So kind of God began to bless the work of my hands. I would get the Bibles and bring them to Nairobi, collect all the Bibles. People would bring them in for me in Kikuyu, and I would correct them, bring them to Nairobi River Road for the zip. You remember the leather cover people used to put. That time actually it was very common. And so each I would charge like 50 shillings to do that. When I bring them here, they charge me like 25 shillings. So at least I have 25 shillings. So if I have 10 Bibles, you can multiply that. I'm in good business, So kind of I grew into that, and I became very zealous in doing this business and all that. And then 1 or 2 years later, probably 2 years later, I got married now. This lady that I had met through Jerek Ministry, Beatrice, she was a teacher, but she was teaching all the way in Nyeri, in Tetu. And so we became friends, and we got married in about a year, as we didn't wait for 5 years.
I was about to ask you that.
No, for us, I think we were ready, and we had no reason to wait for, for 5 years, in about a year. But when we were just expecting our first baby, she was 8 months pregnant. This time I had moved from Makuyu, ministering in Makuyu, and had come to Githurai. There was a small church there that we had begun, which was about 10, 12 people, 15 people at most. Wakati watu wamekuja kabisa, in Githurai.
You had begun the church?
Yeah, but with other people. I was actually under another pastor who was our senior pastor. Today he's Bishop Wangombe. And so we started running the church in a small ministry that we actually started together. I was the secretary general of this ministry. He was he was a chairman, or what do you call them? He's a reverend, the chairman of the secretary general and all that. So kind of the overseer, actually. He was the overseer of the ministry. So I'm here, I'm ministering in this small church. Later on, he moved to Dandora to start another church, and I was left here as the pastor. Young church, growing very slowly. We were renting a place for 6,500, which was not coming forth, and it was really hard to even raise that money. I still remember the owner had a business in town, and every time, every end of the month, we'd go begging, please allow us. We have 2,000. We will try to bring you more. We have 3,000, we'll try to bring you more. And sometimes you just know when we are coming in, we don't have the money because of the way we are coming. Tumenyenyekea sana. We are just trying to say, please help, allow us. We don't even get anything out of this. This is all the people have raised. This time, actually the leaders thought, our pastor is coming all the way from Kikuyu. Why don't you even get him an allowance to be able to travel? So they started giving me 1,500 shillings per month to be able now to travel back and forth as I come to minister to them. Well, the Lord was faithful. This house we are in Githurai also doesn't have electricity. We are borrowing electricity from the neighbor. It doesn't have, washrooms. The washroom there, it is always full. It's dirty. I mean, it was quite not a good place, but the Lord was faithful. He helped us to minister there for several years. Then after that, we were able to buy a piece of land. We raised money. I still remember, after quite some time raising money, we were able to raise 500,000. That was in the year 2002. And we were able to move the church to now our new location. We bought a piece of land, 1/4 of an acre, and we were able to actually build a nice structure and continued doing the ministry. Then we were now coming from Githurai. And along this time, from this small business, and of course, the little salary my wife was getting from teaching, she was a high school teacher, and the small business, and I borrowed, some here and there. We decided we want to do a project and buy a car, a family car. So we bought a car. I drove from Australia to Kikuyu, not knowing how to drive so well. I put a nail, and I decided this is my miracle. I'm not leaving it behind. And I drove all the way to Kikuyu on Saturday. Saturday, I drove the car all the way to Githurai and parked it because the roads in Githurai that time were so bad and it was raining. I couldn't get to the church. So I parked it somewhere, another church, a PCA church. And then after church, I told the people and the reverend were with, please, let's go dedicate my car. And they were thinking maybe it's those very old cars, and they realized, why, it's a new car. You know, it's a new Toyota 100.
Let me cut you short, Bishop. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're coming to the close of this particular episode.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot more we're yet to hear.
Yeah.
But up to this point, what would you say you had learned about this God that you were serving up to that point of your life?
Well, I had seen the faithfulness of God. One, I had no doubt that God had called me as a young person when I was 17. And I became very passionate. There was something burning in me. So I had seen the faithfulness of God teaching me how to walk and live by faith. I would go to the road, I don't have anything in my pocket, and stop asking people to give me a lift to go to a camp or a conference. Then somehow somebody would stop, and before they ask where I'm going, I jump into the car and they drop me in the car. You know, so I had learned to live by faith and trust in God. No wonder my wife is faith and our ministry is overcoming faith, you know. So I think I learned faith, how to live by faith, and that God is faithful. He can never let you down.
Tell me about yourself, Mom Faith. Up to that point, what would you say about this God?
I grew up knowing there is a kingdom of God, but there is a kingdom of the enemy that is always fighting against us, and we need to stand up and fight through prayer. And for me, even my getting married it was just an answer to prayer.
We have to wind it up here for now.
All right.
But the story continues because there is a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you're yet to hear because Mr. and Mrs. Ndungu, they have schools. They have, Mr. Ndungu is an author. They have a hospital. They have a children's home. So all this that you're hearing, I mean, all this is a build-up to what you're yet to hear. And we'll find out also, they were both married. So how come they're now married again? Thank you so much for joining us on Testify. We continue with this amazing story next time, same place. I have been your host, Sharon Aitori Wangenye. Please remember to get in touch with us through the number appearing on your screen, and you can also get in touch with us on our social media platforms. God bless you.